Have you ever traveled to a new city or country? How did you feel when you arrived? Maybe you experienced a little confusion about directions, or maybe something unexpected happened that made your trip more memorable. These types of experiences are great for improving English because they teach us how to react to different situations, use new vocabulary, and learn phrases that are common in everyday life. Let me share a quick story. A few months ago, my friend Tom traveled to Italy with his wife, Emily. They decided to take a bus tour of the city. But as they were getting off the bus at a stop, they realized they had gotten off in the wrong part of the city. Tom said, "I didn't know what to do. I tried speaking in English, but no one seemed to understand me." He and Emily tried asking for help, but their Italian wasn't great. Fortunately, they met a local man who could speak a little bit of English. His name was Marco. Marco pointed them in the right direction, and after a few minutes of talking, Tom and Emily were back on track. Tom was so thankful and said, "That moment taught me how important it is to learn a few basic phrases before traveling. Even a little effort can go a long way." This experience is a perfect example of how we use language in real-life situations, and it can help you in both listening and writing. When you hear how Tom felt and how Marco helped, you start to understand the importance of communication in a different way. Let's talk a little more about another situation. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a quick decision? Like when you're shopping and you can't decide between two items. It happens to me all the time. I remember last month I was in a clothing store looking for a new jacket. I was standing in front of two jackets. One was dark blue and the other was black. I asked the store assistant, "Which one do you think would look better?" She smiled and said, "Well, if you want something that matches everything, the black one is perfect. But if you want something a little more unique, the blue one is great." I thought about it for a moment and decided to go with the black jacket because it was practical. But sometimes, decisions like these help us improve our English because we learn to express opinions and ask for advice. If you can understand these types of conversations, it'll help you not only in shopping, but also in talking to people in other situations. Now think about this. Have you ever had a difficult conversation with someone, like explaining something complicated to a friend or family member? Last week, I had to explain a project at work to my husband, Michael. He doesn't work in my field, so I had to find simple ways to explain everything. I said, "Imagine you're building a house. You need the right tools, the right materials, and you have to plan everything carefully to make sure it works." Once I explained it that way, he understood much better. Conversations like these are great practice for listening and speaking. By understanding how people use analogies and simple explanations, you get better at communicating your thoughts clearly. One last story I want to share involves a moment of celebration. My cousin Sarah recently had a birthday party. During the party, we were talking about our favorite hobbies, and I realized how much we all enjoy different activities. I told Sarah, "I love painting because it helps me relax after a busy day. What about you?" She smiled and replied, "I enjoy running in the morning. It's my way of clearing my mind." Just listening to how we each describe our hobbies can help you understand how to ask questions and give your opinions in English. These stories show how listening to real-life situations can help you improve your English skills, especially when it comes to everyday conversations. The more you listen and practice, the easier it becomes to connect with others and express yourself clearly. As you listen to stories like these, remember that every experience teaches you something new about language. So, how about you? What's a story or situation where you had to use English? Think about it, and try to describe it in simple words. Let's continue with more examples to help you practice. Think about a time when you tried something new, like a new hobby or activity. Maybe you went to a cooking class, started learning a new sport, or joined a group to try a new language. These experiences are perfect for practicing English because they allow you to learn new vocabulary and expressions related to hobbies and interests. I remember a few months ago, my friend Jack decided to take a photography class. He's always loved taking pictures, but he wanted to learn more about it. On his first day in class, he told me, "I didn't know where to start." The teacher talked about different types of lenses and settings on the camera. It was so much information at once. Jack was a little nervous at first, but after a few weeks of practice, he started feeling more comfortable. One day, he said, "I finally took a photo that I'm really proud of. It's a picture of a sunset, and everything looks perfect." Jack's story is a great example of how learning something new can help you practice English in real life situations. By talking about his experiences and feelings, Jack learned how to describe his thoughts clearly. Now let's think about something else. Have you ever had a conversation with someone from a different country or culture? Maybe you met someone while traveling, or perhaps you made a new friend online. Conversations like these are great for practicing listening and speaking because they introduce you to new accents, expressions, and ways of thinking. A few weeks ago, I met a woman named Laura at a conference. She's from Brazil, and we had a very interesting conversation. She told me, "In Brazil, we often greet people with a kiss on the cheek, but I know in some places people don't do that. How do you greet people in your country?" I smiled and replied, "In my country, we usually shake hands or give a hug, depending on the situation." That conversation helped me learn about cultural differences, and it also gave me the chance to practice using new phrases. Laura's question helped me understand how different cultures communicate, and I think it's important to understand these differences when practicing English. Let's take a moment to think about some phrases you might use in these situations. For example, if you're meeting someone for the first time, you can say, "Hi, it's nice to meet you." Or if you want to ask for help, you might say, "Could you please help me with this?" These are simple phrases, but they're very useful when you're having conversations in English. Now let's move on to another example. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to apologize or explain something to someone? Maybe you accidentally made a mistake at work or forgot to do something for a friend. These situations happen all the time, and they're great for practicing English because they help you learn how to express your feelings clearly. Last week, I accidentally missed a meeting at work. My colleague Anna called me and said, "Natasha, where are you? The meeting started 10 minutes ago." I felt so embarrassed. I said, "I'm really sorry, Anna. I completely lost track of time. I'll join the meeting right now." When I joined the meeting, I apologized again and explained what had happened. Anna smiled and said, "It's okay, Natasha. We all make mistakes." This conversation taught me how to apologize and explain myself politely. Apologizing and explaining situations are important skills when speaking English, and it's something you can practice in real life. Have you ever had to explain something in detail, like a complicated task or how to do something? I had to do that recently with my husband, Mike. He wanted to build a new bookshelf, but he didn't know where to start. I said, "First, you need to gather all the tools. Then, follow the instructions step by step. Make sure you tighten every screw properly." It was a long process, but he followed my instructions and was able to finish the bookshelf. Explaining. Tasks clearly is a key part of communication, and it's a great way to practice your English skills. These everyday situations are perfect for improving your listening and speaking abilities. When you listen to how people express themselves in different contexts, you get better at understanding English and using it in your own conversations. Whether you're explaining something, asking for help, or apologizing, these skills will help you become more confident in English. Let's dive deeper into how you can improve your English with some more real-life situations. As you listen to these examples, think about how you can use similar phrases and words in your own life. By practicing these scenarios, you'll get more comfortable with English and improve both your listening and speaking skills. First, let's imagine a situation where you had to make an important decision quickly. Sometimes we find ourselves in a rush, trying to decide between two options, and it's not always easy. Let me tell you about a time when my husband Mark and I were deciding where to go for a short holiday. We had two options: a beach resort in Thailand or a quiet cabin in the mountains. We sat down together and Mark asked me, "Which one do you prefer, the beach or the mountains?" I thought about it for a moment and said, "I think I'd prefer the mountains. I love the quiet and fresh air." But then Mark said, "I was thinking about the beach because we can relax by the ocean." We both shared our reasons and took some time to think. In the end, we decided to go to the mountains because it felt like the perfect place for us to recharge. This decision-making process where we exchanged ideas is a great example of how we can practice listening and speaking. Mark and I used simple language to express our preferences and to explain why we liked one option more than the other. The key takeaway here is that when you're deciding between two things, it's important to explain your reasons clearly, just like we did. Now let's think about another situation. Have you ever had a conversation about a personal challenge you faced and how you overcame it? Sometimes talking about difficulties and how we solve them can help others understand us better, and it also helps us practice English by describing experiences. A while ago, I faced a challenge at work. I was assigned to lead a team for a big project, and it was my first time in that role. I felt a bit nervous and unsure of myself. I remember talking to my colleague Sarah about it. I said, "I'm worried that I might not be able to manage everything. I have to make sure the team stays on track." Sarah listened carefully and then shared some advice. She said, "Natasha, don't worry. The most important thing is to communicate clearly with your team. If you set clear expectations and keep them updated, everything will go smoothly." Her words gave me the confidence I needed. I applied her advice, and the project turned out to be a success. I was able to lead the team with more confidence and learned a lot about managing a group. This story is a great example of how you can use English to express concerns, share experiences, and offer advice. Talking about challenges is not only good for your speaking skills, but also helps you practice listening and understanding different perspectives. Here's another example for you. Have you ever had to talk about a new habit you started? Maybe you began exercising more, reading books, or eating healthier. These kinds of conversations are helpful for practicing English because they allow you to talk about your routine and share your experiences with others. I started a new habit a few months ago. I decided to wake up earlier every day to exercise before work. At first, it was difficult, and I didn't feel like getting out of bed so early. But I kept telling myself, if I want to feel more energized during the day, I have to make this change. One morning, I was telling my friend Jake about it. I said, "I've been waking up at 5:30 a.m. to exercise, and at first, it was really hard. But now I feel more awake and focused during the day." Jake smiled and said, "That's awesome. It's great that you stuck with it. I think I should try something like that too." Talking about new habits and routines is a great way to practice your English because it allows you to share your personal journey and motivate others. Let's move on to another story. Have you ever shared a fun memory with someone, like a day out or a family celebration? Sharing positive experiences can be an enjoyable way to practice English and connect with others. I remember last summer, my family and I went on a hiking trip in the countryside. We spent the day walking along the trails, enjoying the beautiful scenery and taking lots of pictures. It was one of those days when everything just felt perfect. After the hike, we stopped at a little cafe to relax. I was telling my friend, Rachel about the trip, and I said, "We spent the whole day hiking, and the views were amazing. We took so many pictures, and I felt so happy to be with my family." Rachel smiled and said, "That sounds like a perfect day. I wish I could go on a hike like that." Sharing fun memories with friends or family is an excellent way to practice English. You get to use descriptive language to talk about feelings, experiences, and the things you enjoyed. Sometimes we also find ourselves in situations where we need to give advice. Giving advice is an important skill in any language, and it's something we do often. A few weeks ago, a colleague, Emily, came to me for advice. She was preparing for a big presentation at work and was feeling very nervous. She said, "I'm really scared that I'll forget what I need to say. I've been practicing, but I'm still worried." I smiled and said, "I understand how you feel. The best thing you can do is to practice in front of a mirror or with a friend. It'll help you feel more confident." Emily took my advice and practiced several times before her presentation. The next day, she told me, "Thanks, Natasha. Your advice really helped. I felt much more confident during my presentation." Giving advice like this is a great way to practice English because you learn how to offer solutions in a supportive way. Let's take this a step further and really dive into some more situations where you can practice English in everyday life. These situations not only help you learn new vocabulary, but also give you the confidence to speak naturally in different contexts. Every time you practice, you are becoming better at listening, speaking, and understanding English, and that's what we're all here for. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to give a detailed explanation to someone, maybe about how to do something or what to expect in a certain process? These moments can be perfect for practicing your English because they give you the chance to use clear and simple language to explain things. Let me tell you about a time when I had to explain how to set up a new computer to my friend Sarah. She had just bought a new laptop, and it was her first time using a Mac. She was very nervous because she was used to Windows and didn't know where to start. I said, "Okay, Sarah, the first thing you need to do is turn on your laptop. The button is on the top right corner of the keyboard. Once it turns on, you'll see the Apple logo, and then it will ask you to select your language." She followed my instructions, and then I said, "Now, you need to connect to Wi-Fi. Click on the Wi-Fi icon at the top right, choose your network, and enter the password." Sarah smiled and said, "I can't believe how easy it is when you explain it like that. I was so worried." By explaining the process step by step, I helped Sarah understand how to use her new laptop, and I also practiced using clear, simple English. This is a great example of how explaining something in detail can help improve your English skills. The more you explain things to others, the better you'll get at using language in a clear and organized way. Now, let's think about situations where you need to ask for help. Asking for help is something everyone does, and it's a great way to practice your speaking skills in English. A few months ago, I went to a new restaurant in my city, and I wasn't sure how to order the food because it was a little different from what I was used to. I approached the waiter and said, "Hi, could you help me with the menu? I'm not sure what the dish names mean." The waiter smiled and replied, "Of course. What kind of food do you like? I can recommend some dishes." I said, "I like spicy food. Could you recommend something that's not too hot but still flavorful?" He explained a few dishes to me, and I decided to try a spicy noodle dish. It was delicious. Asking for help in this situation was a great way for me to practice how to ask for recommendations and describe my preferences. When you ask for help, in English, you're practicing how to be polite and specific in your requests, which is a useful skill for any situation. In the next example, let's imagine you had to give a presentation at work or school. Presenting in English can be nerve-wracking, but with practice, you can improve your speaking and listening skills. Last year, I had to give a presentation at a conference on how to manage stress. I was nervous because I wasn't sure if everyone would understand me, especially since English isn't my first language. I started by introducing myself and saying, "Hi, my name is Natasha, and today I'm going to talk about ways to manage stress at work." It's a topic that's really important to me because many people feel overwhelmed in their jobs. Then, I explained some tips, like taking breaks, setting boundaries, and practicing mindfulness. After the presentation, I asked the audience, "Does anyone have any questions?" One person raised their hand and said, "I've been feeling stressed at work. What do you think is the best way to handle it?" I answered, "I recommend starting by taking short breaks throughout the day and focusing on your breathing to relax. That can make a big difference." Giving this presentation not only helped me practice my English, but also gave me the chance to use professional vocabulary and answer questions in a clear, understandable way. Presentations are a fantastic way to practice English because they allow you to speak in front of an audience, explain your ideas clearly, and listen to feedback. Let's talk about another situation where you might need to explain something that happened in the past. Storytelling is a great way to practice English because it allows you to use past tense verbs and describe events in detail. Recently, I had a conversation with my friend Tom about a trip I took to Paris. I told him, "Last summer I went to Paris with my husband. We stayed in a beautiful hotel near the Eiffel Tower. We spent the first day exploring the city and visiting famous landmarks. On the second day, we took a boat tour along the Seine River, and the view of the city was incredible. I'll never forget that experience." Tom replied, "That sounds amazing. I've always wanted to go to Paris. How was the food?" I smiled and said, "The food was fantastic. We ate at a small cafe and had fresh croissants and coffee every morning." By telling this story, I was able to practice using past tense, verbs, and describing events in detail. Storytelling is a fun way to improve your English because it lets you practice vocabulary, sentence structure, and fluency in a natural way. Now think about times when you had to explain how to use something, like an appliance, app, or product. Explaining how things work is a good way to practice giving instructions. A while ago, my husband Mark asked me how to use the new washing machine we had just bought. I said, "Okay, first you need to open the door and put your clothes inside. Then, choose the washing program by turning the dial to the option that matches the type of clothes you have. If you want to wash delicate clothes, select the gentle cycle." Mark nodded and said, "Got it. And how much detergent should I use?" I explained, "There's a guide on the detergent box. For a regular load, use about 1 cup of detergent." After that, Mark was able to use the washing machine without any problems. Giving these types of instructions is a great way to practice your English because it requires you to use clear, step-by-step language that others can easily understand. Let's now consider a situation where you need to tell someone about your plans. Whether it's for a vacation, a weekend trip, or a personal project, telling others about your plans helps you practice future tenses and expressing intentions. Last month, I was talking to my friend Rachel about my plans for the upcoming holidays. I said, "This year we're going to spend the holidays with my family. We're planning a big dinner, and I'm going to cook a traditional dish from my country." Rachel was excited and asked, "That sounds amazing. What are you going to cook?" I replied, "I'm going to make a special rice dish with vegetables and chicken. It's something my grandmother used to make, and I'm really looking forward to it." Talking about future plans is a great way to practice using future tenses, such as "I'm going to" or "I will," to describe what you intend to do. Similarly, when we talk about our goals, it's another great opportunity to practice English. Think about your personal goals, whether it's improving your fitness, learning a new skill, or traveling more. A few weeks ago, I was talking to my husband Mark about my goal to run a marathon. I said, "I've been training for a while, but I'm still not sure if I'll be ready in time." Mark encouraged me by saying, "I know you can do it. Just keep training and you'll improve." I smiled and said, I'm going to stick to my plan and keep training every week. Talking about goals allows you to practice using future tenses and explaining your progress in a clear way. Let's keep going and dive even deeper into some more practical ways you can improve your English through everyday situations. The beauty of learning a language is that you don't always need to sit down with textbooks to improve. Simple, real life experiences can give you all the practice you need to become fluent. I'll share a few more stories and examples to help you get an idea of how to practice listening and speaking English naturally. Let's start with a situation where you are helping someone, like explaining how to get somewhere or giving directions. Imagine you are at a bus stop and a tourist asks you how to get to a popular tourist attraction. You can practice explaining directions clearly in English, which is an important skill. I remember one time when I was traveling in a new city, and I asked a local for directions to the nearest subway station. I said, "Excuse me, could you tell me how to get to the subway station?" The local responded, "Sure, walk down this street for 2 blocks, then take a left at the traffic lights. You'll see the station entrance on your right." I thanked him and followed the directions. It was a great chance for me to practice listening to the person's accent and understanding the directions. After I found the station, I thought about how I could explain these same directions in English if I were in the same situation again. Being able to give and understand directions is a valuable skill, and it's something that comes up in everyday life. Let's talk now about another common situation: shopping. When you